Hey there, welcome to the Monday night live stream at 10 o'clock in the morning on Monday. Usually we're streaming at 7 p.m. on Monday evenings, but every so often when I have guests that are across the pond, we stream a bit earlier. And this is going to be repeated tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I'm coming to you at 10 o'clock in the morning with a great interview this morning that I'm very excited about. Before I get into it, just a little bit of housekeeping. I want to mention my companies. I want to mention Vader Drumsticks, which I've recently become a Vader artist. ProLogix Percussion for my lovely practice pads, offset pedals, and of course Sabian cymbals. And the great people at Black Magic Designs for setting me up with my video switcher and monitor. So I just wanted to mention the companies that have been really so supportive and companies that I'm really passionate about. And just so you know, I have my Linktree QR code up in the corner. You can click that and follow all of my social links. Under that, I have my little Kitco page. So if you're looking for technology advice and products, go to my Kitco page. And then, of course, my mailing list. You can hit that QR code. It'll put you on my mailing list, and you'll get all the updates about upcoming live streams and interviews and all this good stuff. So Monday morning, streaming at Monday morning. So my guest today is a wonderful drummer and percussionist and composer. And he's originally from the United States. He's an American jazz drummer and composer. He studied at the Juilliard School of Music in his younger days, and then played all the jazz clubs in New York City, and was around in sort of the heyday of that, and playing in, of course, Birdland, and then he was a member of the Sauter Finnegan Orchestra, and he has moved to Germany a while ago and has lived there, I think, since 1957, and has had a really lucrative freelance career, and also he is an educator and an author, and we're going to get into his drum publications, which are pretty amazing. And he was also a member of the infamous WDR Big Band, which still continues to this day, and we're going to mention some of that. So today I welcome my guest and really appreciate his time and generosity to be on the show today, Sperie Karas. How you doing, Sperry?
Good, good, good. Good to see you, Jim.
How was the intro? Is that okay?
Was perfect. Was perfect. It's perfect. Kind of embarrassing.
Well,
No, thank you very much. You're very kind.
so
Thank you for inviting me.
it's so great to have you on. And you're coming from what part of Germany are you in?
Well, I'm near the Cologne Bonn area, which is on the Rhine, and I settled here. Well, I first came to Germany. I went to Baden-Baden with Eddie Sauter, who
Wow.
took over the big band there in Baden-Baden, which is a beautiful little area, a spa in the southern part of Germany. Yeah, and then after Eddie returned to the United States, I stayed on and freelanced a bit and wound up in this area. As you pointed out, joined the WDR Big Band.
Yeah. Now, what made you stay in Germany that's pretty early on in your career? And
Well, what made me stay? That's a good question. I had to laugh because I just lost you. Oh, yeah, okay. I had to laugh because when I was here in the Army, as a matter of fact, and that's how I met the producer, who was an American, German American, who kind of set up the deal for Eddie Sauter in Baden-Baden. The guy was named is Peter Mordo. And when the band leader of the band there, Kurt Edlong, who was a very famous jazz big band here leader, went to Cologne, there was a need for somebody to take over the band down there. So this friend of mine, this producer, said to me, do you think Eddie would be interested in the gig? I said, well, ask him. So they invited him over to Baden-Baden, and he checked it out. At that time, the top jazz guru was a guy by the name of Joachim Behrendt. He was kind of like the Leonard Feather of Germany, a very famous guy. And he was in charge of the jazz department, and he offered Eddie the job. And Eddie was able to bring a few musicians along with him, one of which was me. And he came back and he said, well, I got the gig, and I'm allowed to take the rhythm section along and some members if I want to. Do you want the gig? And I said, Eddie, I'll come for 6 months, but I have a gig in California. starting in 6 months. He said, well, stay the 6 months and then send a sub. And I've been there ever since. I was 57.
Wow. Oh, unbelievable. And
Yeah, it is.
so that's pretty amazing. And at that time, some of the big groups of the time, I believe you guys were double billed with or opening for or playing shows with some other bands of note, correct?
Yeah, yeah. In Baden-Baden, yeah. We, yeah, we had a lot of famous people come through, and we also played. Eddie was, of course, a avant-garde composer, arranger. So we played in the festival in Donau, Washington, which is the avant-garde jazz festival, the band. And Stravinsky was there. He came to one of our rehearsals one day, and it was very funny because he came and we were rehearsing a rock and roll song, and Eddie's back was to the door, and he turned around and he said, "Oh, Mr. Stravinsky," and he bowed down, and Igor said, "Continue, I just came to greet you." And Stravinsky came up on the stage and stood in front of the drums. And at that time, before the big drum sets, Sonor made me a huge set of drums with a lot of toms and cymbals. And Stravinsky just stayed in front of the drum set and looked, and he said, "Now, what is that? What is this? And what's that?" I said, "Can I ask you a question?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, for my Juilliard exam, I had to play the history of a soldier, which was kind of the first setup drum piece that was ever written. And I had some fresh ideas once on what I wanted to ask him about, which was not clear in the music. And I said, I did this and I did that. Was that okay?" He said, "You did the right thing."
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
Yeah. It was
So
an amazing time.
do you think that Stravinsky was enamored with sort of seeing the drums because percussion is so prevalent in his composing, and do you think that he was just curious and kind of
Oh,
interested?
absolutely. He was curious, and he was not a young man at the time. He was very curious, and he wanted to know about the sticks. And he said, "What's that for?" But I said, "Now it's my time, my turn."
Wow.
Yeah. It was an amazing festival. A lot of famous people were there. For instance, the house that I lived in was kind of an open house, and I invited everybody that came by. And Stravinsky, Schoenberg's daughter was there with her husband, Luigi Nono, who was on to be a famous also composer, with a singer who I went to Juilliard with, Gloria Davy, who appeared at the Donau Washington Festival too. So we were able to hang out a bit. And I had to laugh. Arnold Schoenberg's daughter looked just like a typical California beautiful girl.
Wow.
So it was a pretty amazing festival. It was a pretty amazing time. The Modern Jazz Quartet was there too, so we were able to hang out with them a bit.
Oh wow.
So it was an interesting time. And Eddie's music was just fantastic, as I say, very avant-garde, and a lot of drums and a lot of percussion. So yeah.
When
Yeah.
you say avant-garde, was it sort of no time at times, very improvised without a sense of rhythm, or was it mostly always with a sense of rhythm?
It was always a sense of rhythm. It was in terms of the harmonic sense and the composing sense.
Right.
It was not the real typical big band swing kind of stuff. And of course, Eddie started writing that stuff with Benny and Ray McKinley's orchestra. So, it was a great time for him to be able to do all those wonderful experiments. And they said, "Just go," which was wonderful for him.
Did you find any resistance from audiences ever when the music is, harmonically, when it's really out? Did you find that you ever noticed that sort of resistance to people's ears not being really used to this?
Well, it's a funny thing. Not really at those particular venues, because people were interested in that kind of sort of thing. Yeah.
But I would imagine at a more if you were playing sort of a festival that had more mainstream sort of artists, that it could be that kind of thing.
Well, as a matter of fact, I know that when the band first went to Germany and Eddie took over and conducted it and did sort of kind of his music, there was a little resistance from the musicians and the people, because it was still fairly new to them. They didn't know about that kind of thing, and there was a lot of resistance. Yeah, you're right, in that particular area. But after a while, everything sunk in.
Yeah.
Of course.
Wow, that's pretty wild. And now with that band, did you guys travel back to the States to do performances as
No,
well?
we just stayed. It was just a typical. It was just a German band that was hooked up with
Wow.
the radio station here. No, but we did. Eddie sent a bunch of recordings over for a New Year's concert that they
Oh,
broadcast. Yeah. So yeah,
wow.
but that was about the only time that we had to do with the States. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then were there any television appearances at the time?
Well, yeah, we did. We did some. We did some, but not much. Television wasn't that big at the time.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
There's this the 57, 58. That had come in lately. Yeah, but you asked me why I stayed on. Well, Eddie left the band and I continued, but it was a commercial band. So afterwards, I was wanted to leave and go back to New York. And my wife was a German. I sent her ahead to New York. I said, check it out and see if you like it, because that's where we're going to live and that's where I'd like to stay. So I sent her over, and she got a place and she got a job and so on and so forth. But they wouldn't let me out of my contract.
Oh, wow.
So finally I said to her, come back, I'm still hung up here. So when they finally decided to let me go, I, was ready to go back to the States and, start to try to find work. As you know, what it's like to be a freelance musician when you're gone for 6 weeks or 2 months. So
Right.
before I was going to go back to the States, I got so many freelance calls so that I got so much to do. I was so busy. I went to Japan, I went to Paris, I did all kinds of stuff, so that I just wound up staying here. It was lucrative and I enjoyed what I was doing. And then I moved from Baden-Baden up to Cologne, which was the center of the recording industry at that time, pop recording. So I got involved in that. And then I got the offer to join the big band at the time, which wasn't the big band. It was called the Dance Orchestra, which later became the WDR Big Band. So that's how I got involved there in Cologne.
So you were with that band from the beginnings.
Well, actually, yeah, from the birth of it.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Just to step back, when you brought up your wife, I was going to say that there must be a woman involved with the reason you stayed. I was thinking it was going to be that you stayed for your wife, but she obviously was ready to make the move to New York.
Oh yeah, no, she's international.
Yeah.
In fact, she had the gig first of Eddie Sauter's translator.
Oh wow.
So she translated for him. They gave her a position at the radio station. Can you imagine that as a translator?
Oh my goodness.
No, she would have been happy. She was content and very happy with the States, and she got a modeling job. She's a translator, but she got a modeling job, and she would have been happy to be there. But as it worked out, it just my career took off in a certain fashion here, which I did go back to the States. As a matter of fact, we spent one summer there because Eddie got a job, a very interesting job, writing the arrangements for a musical called Foxy.
Oh.
Which the Canadian government did up in Alaska in Dawson City. So they put on this musical Foxy, which was tremendous. And then he said to me, if you want the gig during the summer, I'll give you the gig and you can take your transportation money and take your wife and travel across the country, show her the country, and fly up to Dawson City, which I did. And it was a pretty exciting time. We had great musicians in the band. And of course, Eddie wrote the music.
Right.
Bert Lahr was the star of the show.
Oh my goodness.
So that was a pretty amazing time.
Oh my goodness. So, and were you playing drum set on that show, or was it percussion as well?
No, I was playing drum set. I just lost you. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, Wi-Fi can be tricky. So
I have to press something or build term file. Okay.
Okay. You're okay now. So
no, I'm you may be okay, but I don't see you.
Oh, you're not seeing me. So the little blue Zoom camera icon, if just make sure that if you hit that icon, it'll put us back up on the screen. The little blue camera looking icon.
I don't see.
Might be at the bottom of your screen.
Okay.
but I'm seeing you okay. So
Okay. Okay. I got you. Okay.
all right. So then just
Okay.
hit your camera.
I'm on. I got you. Got you. You're back on.
Right, but your camera now is it probably has a little red line through your camera where it says
Hit
video.
it. Hit it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Woo.
Okay. I'll keep my hands on. Yeah. No, that was an interesting time because, with the great jazz musicians in the band, Bert Lahr was there. Funny stories. So we drove, when the show was over, I took a Greyhound bus from Vancouver down Highway 1 so my wife would get a chance to see the area. And this is a very funny story. Um, we got to Los Angeles, and I stayed with a friend, a conductor, a composer friend of mine, and I had a publisher who published. I did some work for in Europe, and he invited me out for an afternoon on a boat by a guy by the name of Axel Stordahl, who was a very famous arranger at the time. He wrote for Frank Sinatra and so on. And on this boat were some famous guests, and Johnny Mercer, who had written the lyrics for the Foxy Show, was on that boat. And he was in Dawson City. Of course, I didn't get a chance to meet him. I was not involved in the top stars. So I got a chance to meet him on the boat. And I said, by the way, I did Foxy. He said, you did? Why didn't you let me know? I said, well, the hierarchy wouldn't allow it. But at any rate, I got to meet him and talk with him. So that was kind of a fun time too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, your career really was taking off in Germany, but you got this, wonderful chance to travel across the States with your wife, and you're meeting all these great people. And then after that, after Foxy was done, you went back to Germany and then continued.
Yeah, I did. I went back to Germany. At that point, I was still considering returning, but as I say, my career took off and the freelancing thing, and then I wound up, as I said, in the WDR big band.
And so, were you writing with any of the folks that you've been playing with? Were you contributing to any of the writing at this point, or not really on the composition side?
Well, no. Before I joined the band, as I was freelancing, I played with a very famous at the time saxophone player here by the name German guy by the name of Hans Kohler, and I did a lot of playing with him and a lot of jazz gigs. And then I wrote some stuff for him, and I was always teaching, kind of. When I went to Cologne, I started teaching at a music school there, and I was not happy with the material that was available. So I used to just sketch out little things. You probably know that from your own experience, Jim,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So I just wrote out little, sketches of things, materials for each lesson. And I put that together, and that was kind of how I first did my first book, Jazz Drumming in Big Band and Combo, which a German publisher published for me, Schott Publishing Company, which published Beethoven, very famous publishing company. But somehow they didn't really continue to really do my book. And I was able to do it with Hal Leonard, which I was very happy about. And he did a great job and is still doing a great job, and I'm still using it.
Did you just, as a side note, did you have to buy the rights back to your book, or they just released the book to you and allowed?
No, I had to buy it back. I know.
The publishing.
Buy it back, and Hal Leonard paid it and took it back. It was interesting because the recordings I did with the WDR big band. I have 4 big band play-alongs with and without drums, and 2 combo. And I did all the drumming demonstration at the radio, WDR radio. And I did that as a result of the fact that the head of the department at the time said to me, why don't you do some radio shows about how to play jazz drums? I said, yeah, okay. So he, allowed me to do 4 radio shows, and I was able to discuss, the stuff that I recorded, which was kind of fun because I got a lot of write-ins because we were able then to send out samples of the music and so on.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I just wanted to go back a little bit. So at the time that you played with Hans Kohler, you also had played with Stan Getz. Is that correct?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, a very famous conductor, arranger, and a very dear friend of mine. You probably know the name, Russ Garcia. He was the head of Verve Records.
Yeah.
Well, for Russ, I did a lot of work. Did a lot of recordings for here, and a very funny story with Russ. Russ was a marvelous, wonderfully talented guy. He called me on the phone from Los Angeles. He said, "Speary, I'm coming into Frankfurt tomorrow, and I want to do a long play record with Stan Getz. Can you set it up for me?" And I said, "Well, gee, yeah, what should I do?" He said, "Well, order so and so many strings, bar in the studio, 3 hours from 7 to 10, and so many, first violin, seconds, harp, rhythm section, and this and that." And he said, "Set it up for me." And he said, "Pick me up tomorrow at the airport in Frankfurt at, I don't know, so and so o'clock." And he said, "We'll go on to Baden-Baden." I said, "Yeah, great, I will." So I picked him up at the airport in Frankfurt. We drove up to Baden-Baden, and I had a hotel room for him. And it was evening, and he said, "Okay, is the session set for tomorrow evening?" I said, "Yeah, just like you said." He said, "Can I use your kitchen to write in?" I said, "What do you mean to write in?" We lived in it was a kind of a servant's apartment. It was an old house in Baden-Baden, which was a servant's apartment, and we lived in the top floor. So the kitchen had a kind of a slanting roof. It was a little kitchen. I said, "What, you're going to write in the kitchen?" I said, "What, the arrangement?" He says, "Yeah, I haven't written them yet." I said,
Wow.
"What?" I said, "You want to do 12 tunes tomorrow evening with Stan Getz, and you haven't written the arrangement?" He says, "Don't, not to worry, I'll write them." He said, "Now I'm going to start writing at 7. Would you send a copyist in at every 2 hours?" I
Oh
said,
my
"Oh,
goodness.
good." Yeah. So I picked him up at the hotel. Truly, at 7 o'clock, he was in the kitchen with huge yellow paper, score paper, and he sat down, no piano, no nothing, and just started to scribble. I couldn't even write that fast.
Oh my
So
God.
he wrote all the 12 arrangements, and in the evening, we did the gig. We went to the studio with Stan. Stan came in, and Russ would count off the songs. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'd start to play, and every song that Stan played was a gem. And after every song, Stan would say to Russ, "Russ, you can't take that. It was awful." Russ smiled and said, "Stan, it was marvelous." The next number. And that's the way it went. It was
What's
amazing.
what's the name of that
Stan,
record?
Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Blue Velvet.
Oh
Blue
my
Velvet.
goodness. Blue
Yeah,
Velvet. I got to write that down because I'm going to look it up.
yeah, 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 yeah.
um,
Blue Velvet.
that is.
I saw Stan then, but of course, at the time he was all there. I didn't even think he knew me or noticed me. So we were visiting New York, then my wife and I, and a school friend of mine, Teo Macero, was the A&R man at Columbia Records. He did the stuff with Miles, and I visited Teo in his office and so Teo said, "If you don't have anything to do, I want to go down and check out Stan Getz tonight. Come along, you and your wife, if you like." And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So we went to the club. I don't know, was it Three Deuces or one of the clubs. And couldn't imagine that Stan would even recognize me or think about me or see me. So we sat in the back, Teal, my wife, and myself. And Stan was on the bandstand, and he ran down and he came up and threw his arms on me and said, "Hey, Speary, it's good to see me." I thought, wow, what's that?
Wow.
So he knew me after all.
Wow, that's amazing. So, I mean, you contracted the musicians for that record.
Exactly. I
And
set the whole thing up. Yeah. Yeah.
oh, that's so
Yeah.
crazy. And then got to play, correct?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I mean,
That was the
that's
most fun. That was the
how
most
how
fun.
amazing is that? And
Yeah.
and Stan Getz, I mean, he didn't seem to think the tunes were that great, but obviously, everything.
The tunes were marvelous tunes. He
Yeah.
just was never satisfied with his playing, being
Oh,
the perfectionist that he was. He kept
right.
saying, "Oh, Ross, you can't take it." He said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "But I did that. Don't worry, we'll fix it. Next song."
Oh, that's so great. I mean, we really are our own worst enemies because we're never really happy with what we do, right? It's
Well,
always,
you know from your own experience, right?
yeah, it's a constant evolution, and the crazy thing is in this day and age of recording, like I record out of my home studio for clients, you know, you can do multiple takes because it's in your own place. You're not paying studio time. And
Yeah.
so there's this danger of trying to always perfect and just go around and around and around,
Yeah.
I think it's almost better when you're booked in a studio situation where you're under pressure, get it done, get it the first time and move on, I think those days are better in a way,
Well, it's an amazing thing, but you're saying about first takes, they're always the best for some reason or another.
Yeah, indeed. By the way, I got to make sure this is gonna work. But check this out. So I have a little surprise, and Klaus Hessler's here.
Hey, Klaus. How about that?
I figured
Hey.
it would be kind of fun to have Klaus crash the party for a little while, and
Wonderful.
pop in and say hi.
Yes, Sperie,
It's just-
what a pleasure to see you on the screen. I just figured I only left a message on your answering machine to say Happy New Year, and of course I did see the announcement from Jim about the show he hosts today, and I thought I would absolutely stop by and wish you all the best for 2022.
Wonderful. Same to you. It's wonderful that we're able to touch base like this. How are you? You look great.
Well, I'm just in the middle of the crazy process of reviewing my next upcoming book. So
Super.
my eyes are like this because I'm staring like the whole day into the screen and double checking music and listening to stuff the third and the fourth and the fifth time before you still find any kind of crazy issue of which you think, is it worth fixing, or would you just leave it as it is?
You become blind. You become blind.
For sure. I brought something, Sperie.
Oh, look at
That was
that.
the first copy. Thank you. You're very sweet.
Actually, one of the first drumming books I had. I think this goes back like early '80s.
Could be, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Jim, look at this handsome
I know. Oh my goodness.
guy here.
Look at that long flowing dark hair. So that book, let me see. Oh, these are the Hal Leonard dates. So with the first publishing, you said of that book was in the 80s, Sperie?
Could be, yeah. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know what is the date on the Hal Leonard book.
I'm looking. It looks like I don't know if they renewed, but it says 2006. So it's got to be earlier than that, right? Or is that
This one? It says 1988, and it came with a cassette tape where the exercises were executed. Yeah.
Is that the jazz drumming and big band combo book?
Yeah. At the time, that was the cassettes. That was it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
with the Hal Leonard, I got the CD.
Yeah, they put it out in 2006.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Which, by the way, in the links to this live stream in the description, I put in the Hal Leonard page, a link to it, so everybody can find all of your publications. And all the ones that are listed there, I believe, are the drum set solos, 7 contemporary pieces, the rock drum set solos, 8 contemporary pieces, the jazz drumming and big band combo with the CD, maybe a digital download at this point, I'm not sure. And then the rudimental rock jazz etudes for snare drum, bass drum groove control for drum set, and it says
those are different publishers.
Oh, right, that's Alfred.
Yeah.
Rudimental rock jazz etudes is Ludwig.
Rudimental rock jazz. That's a kind of a takeoff on the Charlie Wilcoxon stuff.
Gotcha.
That's my modern version. Because I studied. That was one of my first teachers, Charlie Wilcoxon.
Yeah, I was going to bring
This
that
is
up.
a kind of a rudimental rock jazz etude. There's a kind of an update where I kind of did a kind of a tribute to him and a kind of updated what I learned with him.
Wow, that's amazing. And I guess the other two, Hal Leonard.
The Ludwig Masters, rudimental rock jazz etudes, and important avenues for today's jazz drummers. Those are the two that I have with Ludwig Masters.
Oh, wonderful.
And then I have with Alfred drum set, groove control, and bass drum groove control. Those are with Alfred.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
And I was going to mention that there's a page on Facebook in a group called the Wilcoxon Rudimental Challenge. And so my buddy Kevin Lehman put together this page in this group where people are performing the Wilcoxon solos and from the Rudimental Swing Solos book and performing all of the solos. And so everybody's contributed. And so I told that group that you were going to be on today and that you quite possibly are one of the last living students of Charlie Wilcoxon,
It could be. Could very well be. Could be. Oh, he was an amazing guy. He was a terrific guy. You know, Modern Rudimental Swing. When I first saw that book at the time, now it's not that sensational. Everybody knows that stuff. But when I first saw that, I thought, wow, what's that? You know, I just couldn't believe it at the time. And then I went up to study with him in Cleveland, and that was an amazing thing, that first experience. And I thought I was kind of a hot drummer because I won a few contests with the rudimental stuff in high school and all that, and I thought it was pretty good. So I went up there with that book under my shoulder, and the arcade building in New York, and I went to see him, and he said, "Oh, come in and sit down." He had a big, thick practice pad, and they put the book down there in this. And he said, "Now play something." So I started to play what I thought was on the page. He looked at me and he said, "Do you have a metronome?" I said, "No." He said, "Go outside to the next room." That was his wife. She sold drumsticks and metronomes. "And pay $5 and get a metronome and go back home. And when you can play this page to the metronome, come back."
Wow.
I said, "Oh." I was in tears. So I paid my $5, took the Greyhound bus back home, 60 miles south of Cleveland, turned the metronome on, and he was right. Boy, my time was a catastrophe, a complete mess. So after a while, I went back and then we worked on it. And now he was great guy. You know, that was, and it's the stuff he did was just amazing. It was, you know, he was so inventive. If you think of what he created, right?
Yeah. And I mean, the stuff that he's created is still repertoire that everybody appreciates and works on, and it's important even in today's literature that's available. It's still a really important book, and you had a chance to study firsthand with him, which is really incredible. And I just wanted to go back to that first lesson. You basically got thrown out of the lesson. You had to pay for the lesson. You had to buy a metronome and then go back home.
Yeah.
So he was a tough teacher, correct?
Yeah. Oh, he was a tough teacher. He was a tough teacher. But a wonderful, sweet, marvelous guy. I have to tell you a funny story about his wife. His wife was next door. It was an arcade building. It was a glass store. And so I wanted to buy some drumsticks. He said, "Well, you go next door to my wife and buy the drumstick." I said, "Okay." So she had the drumsticks. And then she had a little something that you weigh eggs on. You know, an egg to weigh eggs. Yeah, scale.
Right.
So she rolled the sticks on the counter, right? And then she weighed each stick on the scale, and then she sold them to me.
Wow. Oh,
As you were saying about the literature that everybody uses, I remember when I was at Juilliard, we used to practice every evening until 10 when it closed. And before 10, a half an hour, 45 minutes before, everybody was there. We'd take the two Wilcoxon books and we'd all drum through them. That would be our nightly da capo, nightly coda.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Klaus, you referenced the Wilcoxon stuff in some of your literature, and you were the person that told me about the interpretation of the double drag tap being go to bed, Tom, go to bed, Tom, which I thought was really amazing and remarkable because I always looked at the way that it was notated and thought like, that's like so uncomfortable to play, or it doesn't even feel like it really belonged. but then your interpretation of it was completely different. And Klaus, did you get that firsthand from perhaps Sperry, or where did you get that knowledge?
Well, it was it was kind of a mixture of different things. I mean, the way how I got into the more traditional ways of interpreting American rudiments, or what is looked at as American rudiments, was more or less through that source of Basel drumming and Swiss and French drumming. Right. But I found it quite remarkable, and I remember one of the very first meetings that I had with Sperry, when we had dinner with Robert. I'm not sure if you remember, Sperry.
Yeah, sure.
You brought your Wilcoxon book with you. Your very first one that you had, that you studied out of.
I got them. Yeah.
Still had the notes of Wilcoxon, putting the little done.
Go to bed, Tom. I even wrote it down.
And Wilcoxon wrote that down with the double drag. He said the double drag should sound like as if you were saying, go to bed, Tom, go to bed, Tom. And if you add the value of the notes, it adds up to 10, respectively 5, depending on how you put the value of the notes. But that's something, I mean, that honestly is a complete game changer. If you have that inside information, your way of how you interpret the whole Wilcoxon books will be completely different as opposed to most everybody else's.
Right.
So that was an important piece of the puzzle that I owe to Sperry, actually. Thank you.
My pleasure, young man.
So, just quick question: how did you two meet, and when did you two meet?
Oh, I've known. I think we first met at a friend of ours' house that he mentioned. But I've known of his, known of Klaus for a long time. He's quite an important figure here, and an amazing player and an amazing educator. No, I've known about him, but we unfortunately only touched base about a year or two ago. Was that right, Klaus?
It was definitely way before COVID hit. I would think it was somewhere like fall 2018. I would think. When we met first, which was
that's right.
A mutual friend of ours by the name of Robert Brenner, who is taking care of the say music education with the drum corps of the
German Military Academy.
Yes.
German military academy music. Yeah.
And Robert had always great things to say about Sperry, and I was saying, Jesus Christ, I have to meet this guy. This sounds like a lot of interesting, funny stories and a lot of.
I hope he wasn't lying, Klaus. Klaus has got an amazing reputation, rightly so, because he's a fantastic player and a fantastic educator. And he's written some amazing books, and is continuing to do so. So he's an important link to the drumming community, that's for sure.
Yeah,
and a wonderful guy on top of it.
He's a great guy, and he's a link for folks that are looking to study rudimental drumming. He's a link to deep knowledge on not only American and Swiss and French rudimental drumming, and then his prowess on the drum set. So he's sought after in the States for and internationally for lessons, so including myself. And so I feel very lucky to have met Klaus many years ago, and we stay connected, and it's been really wonderful. And I want to mention that there's a bunch of people in the chat. I'm just going to go through. I don't know if there's any questions yet, but let me just go through and just mention that we have guests in the chat. Anthony Cusina from New Jersey in the chat saying, hello, gentlemen. My mom is in the chat, so my mom is here. My mom is usually in all of the interviews, so thanks for hanging around, Mom.
Oh, wow.
Gary Weiss is here. He's a New York drummer, freelancer, wonderful drummer, hanging with us today. Of course, Klaus is here. He's in the chat. So we have some folks from Twitch hanging with us. Actually, Anthony Cusina does have a question. He said, Sperry, how did you get started playing the drums, and who are some of your musical inspirations?
Wow, that's a good one. That's I started, how does I start playing? My family went to Europe in 39 before the war started. So, and on the boat back, there was a little band, and I was absolutely mesmerized by the drummer. So, in our school system in Ashland, Ohio, we had a wonderful guy by the name of Dr. Pete. He had a fantastic program. So, they gave free lessons, and I was able to get some free lessons from a guy who became a very famous drummer later on, Max Albright, who became a studio musician in Hollywood, and his uncle was a famous drummer in New York City and teacher. In fact, Terry Gibbs studied with him. So yeah, that's how I started, and I was, I guess like all drummers at that time, I loved Gene Krupa. He was my idol, and and then of course Buddy Rich. I still try to figure out what the hell he did, and so that's how that happened. And yeah, I went on from there. I started my own band, and I had quite a successful big band around there. And then, yeah, I continued on then to Juilliard.
Right. By the way, speaking of Buddy Rich, I just saw a clip from the other day that someone had posted on Facebook or something, and I was just amazed at the intention and conviction and sort of he was playing. It was all single strokes, and it was very fast, of course, and he was sweating profusely, and the determination on his face, I was just amazed, and I was looking at him saying, you don't see that many drummers that put that much of their soul and effort and conviction into playing a drum solo. It was just mesmerized. Like, he was just on another planet at that moment. I wish I had the clip to just pull it up and show you what I mean, but yeah, just incredible.
No, you're absolutely right, Jim. But he was that way all the time. He was that way all the time, and he was, and he couldn't stand in the band. He would just fire sections if he didn't feel that their conviction was not up to his. He had the, that was it. That was Buddy.
Yep. And by the way, back to the WDR big band, and my friend Bob Mincer, who has been the primary conductor for the band for a while, he played in Buddy's band, and he has great stories.
I know. I've got some tracks that he wrote the arrangements for at that time. Yeah,
pretty amazing. So so that was Anthony's question. I hope that answers your question, Anthony. And also the name of all the books. Follow that link that I have posted in the description, and you can find many of Sperry's books there. So at least the Hal Leonard publications are listed on that link. So check that out. Let's see. Nick Kapoulis is with us today, hanging with us. Very good. Good to have you, Nick. And let's see. Dave Clive hanging with us, a good friend of mine from Brooklyn, New York, who has the Dave Clive Gretsch Museum. And he's going to be a guest in a week from today doing vintage drums. So we're going to do a vintage drums episode, the one and only one we've ever done.
Super.
And I think we have somebody from perhaps Russia, and I can't read it, so I apologize because I don't speak Russian. Cliff Hochberg is hanging with us. Cliff Hochberg, thank you for hanging with us. He said, what a great opportunity. Carolee Rodina hanging with us. Cliff Hochberg said, funny you said Buddy was on another planet because I always felt he must be some kind of alien to play the way he did. Yes, indeed. So if anybody has any questions, please field them in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat. So any and all questions for Sperry or while Klaus is with us, if you have any questions for Klaus as well. And, I appreciate everybody hanging with us today. So I wanted to kind of ask you, Sperry, from your experience in playing jazz and playing big band, from the era that you come from, what is your sort of assessment of the music business now and sort of the way things are for drummers who are starting out in this environment compared to when you started?
Well, that's a good question. It's a hard one to answer.
Yeah.
In many ways it's easier. In many ways it's more difficult. I think I'm still teaching here to the university in Essen and at the military academy. You know, I see my drummers who graduate after 4 and 5 years, and they exist. They're able to play gigs. You know, they're playing clubs, but they have to be all around. They have to be able to do everything. You know, they have to be able to play a dance gig, play a musical, you know, back a singer, you know, and teach. So, you know, they get along and they do okay. I'm amazed myself, but you know, they seem to do all right. I don't know what the situation in the States is like. That you would know better than me,
Yeah.
Jim.
And I think you're right. You said it's easier in some ways and harder in other ways. I mean, I think the business is as far as the amount of work available, it's at times it seems like it's been limited in certain situations. However, as far as learning, I think there's, you know, we were dropping the needle as kids trying to listen to what people were doing on records, and now, I mean, you can just YouTube anything and watch a video clip, or, you know, which is dangerous because it's not always good information that's out there. But, you know, there's a lot of information available, and you see how kids can really just, you know, they're inundated with information. So they're able to really, they have access to everything, and they have access to people across the world via Zoom, like we're doing right now.
You're totally right. No, you're totally right. They're very fortunate. You know, they can zoom in and you know, see anything immediately, check any, you know, any artist out. You know, when I was growing up, you had to run to a ballroom someplace and take your pad out to say, I put a crash cymbal there when he did this and did that. You know, you had no idea what to do. You know, if I think about one of the first times I tried to play to audition for a big band, I just knew the rudimental drumming, and all of a sudden I get a big band sheet. I had no idea what to do with the music, you know. So, but now the kids can, as you say, they're inundated with that, and the level as a result has gotten much higher. You know, I feel
Right.
The proficiency level.
Yeah.
It's amazing what the kids are able to do nowadays. You know.
Yeah, the technical thing has become, you know, on a different on a different level for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Klaus, what's your assessment of that whole thing? You know, sort of looking back with Sperry's lens, and then looking at the lens of today.
Well, I agree to a lot of things that already have been said here. These days, when you play the drums, you don't, and you want to be successful and make a living out of that, you don't just play the drums. You need to be a mixture of a drummer, an educator, maybe a little bit of an author, a cameraman, a sound engineer, an IT specialist, a social media guy. You need to be a mix of everything in order to be somewhat successful with what you do and make a living out of that. Just being able to play the drums in a decent way itself can work, but will not absolutely have to work. The chances are it's not going to work. So and I'm not even evaluating that. I'm just saying it from a standpoint. I realize it is so.
Right. Yes.
And the other thing is, I always, I truly appreciate situations like these where we get to talk with somebody like Sperie, who has seen the instrument grow from a very different starting point, and I mean also with the information that I got from Chapin during all the lessons, you had to go out and watch people play in order to find out what is it actually that I have to do, because there would not be a book, or there would not be a video, or there would not be a tutorial that shows you how things are done. You had to find that own path, and there was actually nobody who could really help you. You were just trying to find your own personal way, and which also goes to say that the instruments back then were very different.
Yeah.
You could tell the drummer by the instrument. You would see, oh, this set of drums most likely Sid Catlett. And this one, oh, that must be Gene Krupa because it has that little 8-inch splash and it has the floor toms reversed and all of that. It's not exactly like that anymore.
No, it's not exactly not that like that anymore. Very well said, Klaus. Wonderful. I agree with every word.
Speaking to that, that's pretty interesting. There's one drummer these days that I could honestly say, if you see his drum set, you know who the drums belong to. And there's a couple probably, but I would say there's one in particular, and he was my guest last week. I had Daru Jones on, and his drums are set up in such a way that no one is setting them up that way. Although he and I made some observations where we were talking about early drummers, including Baby Dodds, and talking about the slant of the snare drum being at a very extreme angle early on in the beginning of drumming, and now watching Daru play with his entire drum set up at that extreme slanted angle, which I think is quite interesting, being also that he is a traditional grip player, and so he's sloping all of his drums to the angle of his drumstick. But Sperie, when you saw that drummer in 1939, and you saw that first, that moment when it lit the spark for you, and you saw the drum set, describe if you can remember kind of what you saw in that drum set.
No, I actually was just a simple drum set. I think it was just a bass drum, a cymbal, and a snare.
Right.
Slant, a snare. Like I said, I'm sure it was very primitive. I'm sure the music was also very primitive. But as a little 9-year-old guy, I was absolutely thrilled.
Right. At 9 years old, we gravitate towards the visual of the instrument. The first time I saw a drum set in person, that was it. I was hooked. So just seeing it, I hadn't even touched it yet. But I would imagine, maybe at that time the bass drum was a little bit bigger, and there was one of those.
Was big. Yeah.
Maybe like a little Chinese tom-tom, or just a snare drum.
I'm not even sure he had a tom. It was a bass drum. You're right. The bass drum was big, and the snare drum was simple. So,
yeah.
He
didn't have the snare drum propped up on a chair, did he?
No. I think he had a stand. But Klaus is right with the development of the drums.
Yeah.
The way they were in the 40s and 50s, and look at them now. The way the stands are, and
Yeah, and I think that's also something which should have some sort of relevance within that whole scope of education, because looking towards the aspect that I think the first snare stand was invented 1898 something from the Leedy company. And before that, those very angled snares, as you were saying, Jim, that mostly goes back to the fact that the drummers were using what they called the double drumming system. They played the bass drum and the snare both with the hands,
right? And
which is why the snare was angled in that crazy fashion. And mentioning a cymbal tilter. Imagine that. Like by the 40s, and I would like to hear your take on that, Sperie. There were no cymbal stands that had tilters where you could angle.
Yeah, they saw the hole there in the top of the cymbal.
Right. They put those keyhole things.
Yeah,
into
exactly.
So the cymbal would slide towards the player.
Yeah. And then they came out with that cymbal, the tilting the cymbal. Now it's absolutely normal. Well, for instance, like the double bass drum pedal and so on. That's normal now.
Yeah. Although there are some primitive versions of double bass pedals, I think that I've seen, throughout history where it was being experimented with, even to the point where there are two side by side on a bass drum, which is pretty interesting. And that, Klaus, maybe it might have been back to the 30s and 40s with that.
Yes, true.
Yeah. It's funny, though, speaking about the development of the drum set, our instrument is really the only instrument that is completely modular and completely customizable, even from day to day. You can just decide, I'm going to take out this size, that size, this symbol. You can configure your drums any way you want. It's not like you could take a trombone and flip it around and go, well, today I'm playing my trombone backwards. So we really have this incredible instrument that is the only fully customizable instrument, even from its inception.
No, you're absolutely right, and we're the most modern instrument, if you will. How long have we existed compared to the other instruments?
Right.
Right?
So that moment that you spoke of, that moment of Stravinsky looking at your drums and being in awe. I mean, coming from a primarily, obviously, classical and orchestral background, he must have been, thinking, how can I fit this into one of my symphonies? Which would have been
you're
cool.
Right. He was curious, man. Well, of course, he was amazing. I was thrilled to death and honored that he was even standing there, but
Yeah.
So.
By the way, Cliff Hochberg said that when he was young, he had to travel into Manhattan once a week to study with Sonny Igo. And
yeah.
Yeah.
How about that?
And he said it's amazing that the very technology that we have now and the access to knowledge. So, but yeah, I mean, everybody. I mean, I would think for you, how far did you travel to study with Wilcoxon? You said it was about a 90-minute ride.
Well, yeah, at least it was 60 miles on a Greyhound bus, but that was just normal way to travel. I took the Greyhound bus all the way south to Columbus to see Count Basie and Joe Jones, right? Which was, I never forget that with that cross sticking when they did the stage shows. I stayed for every show.
Wow.
Greyhound bus time. Yeah.
Man, you must have a lot of stories about the musicians that you had seen at the time. Because really, I mean, at the time that you were coming up, all these are all of the beginnings of jazz and of the greatest jazz musicians that we've had, in our history. So you were able to see, you had access to all these guys that now many of us have only read about,
Yeah, no, I was, you're right. I was very fortunate to, that when I was with Juilliard, I had formed a kind of a string ensemble band, and we had the good fortune to play in Birdland. We were kind of the intermission band for guess who? Miles, Dizzy, Charlie Parker, I think it was Max Roach, Tommy Potter, Bud Powell. Those were the headliners. So we got to listen to those guys every night. It was an amazing experience. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. That would be a documentary by itself.
Yeah. No, that was amazing. And as we were there, Charlie Parker was always the first one back after the intermission. So sometimes he would just stand next to us and just take his horn and just tootle along a little bit with us, just for the fun of it. So I didn't think that Charlie Parker or any of those guys would know me. So a couple of years later, we were playing down the street with Sauter Finnegan in the place called the Bandbox. And we were up on the stage, and the door opens, and Charlie Parker comes walking in. And then the band was all saying, "Hey, here comes Bird, here comes Bird." And he comes right up to the stage to me. I was playing percussion in the band. Comes right up to the stage to me, and he says, "Hey, man, it sure is nice to see all you kiddies having a good time." He turned around and left.
Wow.
He runs right up to me and said, "It sure is nice to see all you kiddies having a good time."
That's
Isn't
amazing.
that amazing?
And he must have still been, I mean, he was young when he had passed. I mean, how old do you think he was at that time?
When he died?
No, when he came up to the bandstand.
Oh, it was in 30s, early
Yeah.
30s, actually.
In his 30s. That's funny.
I mean, he just turned everybody's head around, when we first heard him play.
Yeah. Wow, that's funny. Did everybody kind of have a moment of, why is he coming up to the bandstand?
Yeah, that's right. No, because the band, they were just like this. Bird's come. He was a really sweet, wonderful guy. As I say, he walked right up to me. I said, "Wow, it's amazing." Yeah.
So, I just wanted to mention with the WDR Big Band, you were there from 1967 until like 1998.
No, 19.
1990s.
95.
1995. That's a long tenure with a band.
Yeah. Well, the latter few years were I had a lot of we had a lot of guest soloists, so I was able to take a lot of time. Yeah, it was a long time. But it was a fun time, and I enjoyed it. Got a chance to work with a lot of good people, a lot of good band leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah, played a lot of good music.
I was born in 1967.
Oh, good for you.
So
how long have you been playing?
I started when I was around 11 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty long time. I was just noticing in the list of people that were band leaders, so Bob Mincer's been there since 2016, and Richard DeRosa, 2014 to 2016. So like when I'm just trying to see, I guess the last band leader that you had worked with was Jerry Van Ruyen.
Royan, yeah, right.
Because he was only there to 1995.
Yeah.
So I guess
that was the last guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the last guy.
So,
but
Were you composing or doing arranging for the band as well as playing in the drum check?
I never did any arranging. As I composed all the stuff for my big band album, I wrote all that. Those are my own comp right.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately, no, I didn't. I was awfully busy because I was teaching and freelancing. So no, I'm sorry that I didn't have more chance to write.
Right.
But I do that now in my university in Essen. I have a little big band which I write for, which is a lot of fun. So I'm able to do that. I can take up all that lost time, which I enjoy writing, and I enjoy coaching. I enjoy doing that.
Do you do private lessons as well, or you're just teaching on the university
No.
level?
I'm doing, as I say, I'm doing those two venues
Yep.
with the one university and the Army, the German Federal Army Forces
Wow.
Music Academy. So that keeps me tied up. I'm gone about 2 or 3 days a week, so there's a lot of traveling and a lot of work.
Yeah.
Which I enjoy thoroughly.
Do you get to do any playing these days?
No, I only just not really. I do most of my playing when I teach.
Yeah.
Most of my playing when I teach, just demonstrate, because I do a lot of play-alongs with the guys, big band play-alongs. I have written out the parts to about 300 or 350 arrangements, which I have the guys play along to. And so I demonstrate a lot of times what they should do, how they should approach the phrase, what kind of an instrument, how they should, where they should use the snare drum, the bass drum, and all that kind of stuff. So
with a library of play-alongs that big, I mean, is any of this stuff commercially available?
Well, not really, and I don't even know how that would work with the rights.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I could do that with the rights.
You should look into that.
Great if I could.
Yeah, that would be something to look into. You
Yeah,
could have
I
a whole series of play-alongs.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah. No, as I say, I've got at least over 300, all kinds of, rock, jazz, whatever you can think of.
Wow.
And I do these with the kids, and, it prepares them to go out and, tackle that scene. Because as you know, if you've never played a part before, it's difficult. You have to know how to interpret a drum part, because most of it is not there.
Yeah.
You have to compose most of it yourself, as you know. So that's.
I was just discussing this the other day with somebody that listening. I was when I'm teaching, we're listening a lot to music. There's a lot of listening going on, and I was thinking back when I was studying with one of my first teachers. He would give me big band charts every week. Right. And I could read them all. I saw it, but I wasn't hearing them. I didn't know what it was supposed to sound like. I didn't even realize, I didn't really even understand why I was playing the figures that I was playing, because I didn't have that connection to the music at that point. Right. I was very young, and he wasn't playing music for me. And that's why I spend so much time playing music for students. I didn't understand why were the figures there. I would hit them, but I didn't realize that it was, oh, those are trumpet parts. That's the sax section. Those are ensemble figures. Those are, it's like, it's so important. And I think the play along thing that you've put together could be really an incredible resource. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out of there, but from your experience and your lens that you've had throughout your music career, I would think that catalog would be really incredible. I think we need to look into it.
Well, it'd be great. Maybe you can give me a tip on that. But it's an amazing thing. Drum parts.
Yeah.
That's a real quagmire. Most of the drum parts are awful. What is in there you don't want to play? What's not in there you need to play, right?
Exactly.
So, and I explain to my kids when I start off, I say, because I write everything by hand. I say, aside from my bad handwriting, this is the way a drum part should be. On the left-hand corner, it says swing, it says jazz, it says rock. Okay, those are swung eighths or those straight eighths, right? And it says hi-hat. Well, you should start with a hi-hat. It says trumpets. And on the top of the be some notes. Did you see it's on the top of the note page? Okay, you want to maybe hit them with a snare, and the bottom maybe with a bass drum. That's the information that you need to know. But the most important information is the information that you get hearing it, as you pointed out, right? The second time you play it, you're going to know what to do. But that play along I got from my teacher at Juilliard, Saul Goodman, the timpanist from the New York Philharmonic. The beginning lessons were technical, blah, 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 how to tune, how to do that. And after that, we just played along. Beethoven symphonies, Brahms symphonies. So our lessons were playing along to the music. So that's why I did my jazz teaching the same way. At that time, nobody did anything like that.
Right.
But, and that, as you pointed out, you did something, but you didn't know why. You need to know why. You need to know why you're going to hit the bass drum then on the ands with the snare. You need to know why you don't want to hit the snare and a bass drum together always, maybe once. You need to know that, and you're doing the right thing with your students intuitively.
It's funny. I was thinking about, what you were saying before. You need to know what to play, and you also need to know what not to play, because many of the arrangements that are given to, let's say, middle school and high school jazz ensembles, they're written by arrangers and not drummers, usually. And so I always explain to students, I'm like, this drum part was written by an arranger who is writing things that a drummer would never play. So,
Bravo.
And that's where you have to learn to interpret, right? Of course, those parts, what not to do, what to do. Like they'll write, bass drum, snare drum, cymbal, all hitting in unison all the time. And you're like, no. So,
but what they do is they write out the fills, right?
Yeah.
They write out the fills instead of writing on what beat is supposed to be on the forehand or from the 2 to the 1, or, that's, as you say, they're writing out what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the strange thing on top of that is that, still quite some people to the very day are making fun of us drummers because they used to say, okay, the drummer is the guy who is hanging out with musicians, but actually we are the only ones in the orchestra or in the big band who are confronted with that need to interpret what we have in the chart. Because if you look at all the other instruments, it's basically pretty much written out. Play this, play that, rest here, play this, do this, do this, do this. But the poor drummers, as we are, we need to find those avenues. What is it actually really that the arranger expects from us? Because the paper doesn't tell us that.
Right.
That's an interesting take, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
No, you're absolutely right. We're lucky because we play the part each time new. We don't, as you say, saxophone player plays the notes except for his solos that he's written. And with us, we can, change the part every time, and we should.
Yes, and we should.
Yeah, Klaus is absolutely right. Bravo.
But
Yeah,
we're
very
constantly,
good.
you're right, we're constantly reassessing and navigating the part. So,
Right.
you know, every time, you know, especially when you have a new chart thrown in front of you, you're having to make that decision by this, you know, the ear
Right.
telling you, and then the information that's given. It's quite, you know, quite tricky for us. Yeah, that was a great.
What a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful challenge. It never becomes old. It's always, you know, exciting and new.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. By the way, Klaus, your new book, which is coming out soon, remind me of the name of that.
It's going to be called Taladiddle.
Taladiddle. Yeah.
Taladiddle, and it's actually all about that conceptual common ground between Indian rhythms, konakol and sulkatu, but using those traditional Indian compositions and putting rudimental parts on top of that.
Wow.
Cool.
Wow.
That is such a unique concept, and
Wow.
you and I will have to definitely book a live stream when your book comes out to have you back on as a guest to promote the book and talk about it, and maybe you can do some demonstrations for us, which would be amazing.
That's
Anytime.
a wonderful idea. Amazing. Bravo.
All right, so you know what? I'm going to do my little speed round question. So, and I'm going to have both of you guys answer because I think it'll be fun. And the last time I had you on, Klaus, when I mentioned certain drummers, you just laughed and you didn't really have much of a response because certain drummers, when we think of them, we just have to laugh. Like somebody like Buddy, where it's just what he did was still mystifies people to this day. So when we get to the drummers part, we'll see what kind of reactions we get. But so you, Sperie, you've already told us the first time that you wanted to play drums. Basically, was that you're 9 years old and you were with your family and you saw a band. What was the first chime that you did actually get to hit some drums?
Oh, gosh. I was maybe 10 or 11 or 12 or something. My father bought me a field drum, you know, so, but little by little, yeah. But little, because, you know, high school's marching band and all that stuff.
Right.
So, no, but I guess it was around 12, 13.
That
Just got
field
myself.
drum, because that was my second question, was the first drum that you ever had. So was it that field drum, do you still have it? Or is it?
No.
I always wonder, like, you know, because sometimes people hold on to the first instrument they ever had. And
Which is great. I wish I had, yeah.
yeah,
Which I had.
I had my first drum set up until a few years ago, but I gave it to a student. And so I let it go. But I did have it for a long time. Klaus, what was your first drum?
My first drum kit was, I mean, it was made by Trixon.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah, Trixon.
That was the company. It consisted of a bass drum, a snare. It had only one rack tom. It had one cymbal, and it had a pair of bongos. There was no hi-hat. The cymbal was, I think it was, it was a sub-brand of Paiste back then. And the bass drum pedal, which is right up on the shelf over there, was a Sonor.
Oh, okay.
And if you give me 5 seconds, I'll show it to you. Wait a second.
Yes, yeah. Love to see it. It's funny, when my first drum set, I didn't have a hi-hat either. And I actually took a clamp, like a wood clamp, and a washcloth. I'll tell Klaus this when he puts his ears back in. Hey, Klaus,
Yes.
I was just saying that I didn't have a hi-hat on my first drum set either. And I wanted the sound of a hi-hat, sort of, so I only had one cymbal. So I put a washcloth with a little clamp on it so that it would mute it. And I was able to play a muted cymbal with a washcloth and a wood clamp.
That's ingenious. Terrific, ingenious.
It reminds me somewhat on what Joe Jones was telling about the first sizzle cymbals. Have you heard that story?
No.
Somebody was I don't recall the name of the drummer that he mentioned, but the guy put a coin in his hand. I will I will just use a tuning key, and he put it underneath the cymbal. I think he somebody like A.G. Godley, whoever that is.
I don't know.
So if you wanna track down, there's this record, Joe Jones, the drums,
Yeah.
And he says the first guy who used that sizzle-like effect, he put out a coin, he put it underneath the cymbal, and he played the cymbal.
That's great story.
But anyhow, this is
Oh,
this
wow.
is
Oh
my
yeah,
first,
I
my
remember
first
it.
bass drum pedal.
I remember it. I remember it. Tricks on, right?
That's a sonar.
That's Honor.
It has
Oh
a
yeah,
sonar sound.
I remember that pedal. Yeah.
And it's basically still in the original shape. The only thing that was added, my father made that for me. There is a leather strap here, which
Oh yeah.
which kind of broke at some point. So he made that different extension thingy here with an extra screw. But the rest of it is like the original. I would say late 50s.
Wow.
Pedal. So this is what I still have, and that pair of bongos. Unfortunately, I do not have the drums anymore. Not sure where they went. That was my first kit.
Oh my goodness. Okay. First record that you ever bought,
You, Sperry?
Sperry.
Oh, I'm trying to think. I think it was a Benny Goodman record. I think it was a Benny Goodman with Gene Krupa. I think so. Yeah.
Nice.
I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was a Benny Goodman record.
How about you, Klaus?
I think the first one I had, I'm not exactly sure, but I think the first one I had was a sampler with Glenn Miller Big Band. This was not the one I bought. I got this for Christmas, I remember. It may have been either Harry Belafonte or Queen.
Wow. Okay.
You can tell the variety of things I was listening to.
Yes.
Bravo.
Absolutely.
What was your first record? Jim?
Well, the first jazz album I ever owned, my dad gave me Time Out by Dave Brubeck.
Oh, yeah.
Which I still have that vinyl. But the first record I had bought with my own money, I think at the time, may have been either because I was listening to rock as like a young 11-year-old.
Sure. Sure.
I think it might have been an Aerosmith record. And then shortly thereafter, I was buying, getting into sort of Mahavishnu and all that stuff. But I think it was, I think it was an Aerosmith record when I was a kid. But that first jazz album, that first vinyl, I still have. Time Out, yeah. So first, you said your first drum hero was probably Gene Krupa, right?
Yeah.
How about for you? Who's your first drum hero, Klaus?
I definitely have to say Neil Peart.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I just wanted to mention, Neil was honored. He got a Hall of Fame award this year at the Percussive Arts. Well, I guess it would be last year since we're into the first of the year here. But he was honored at the PASIC at the Percussive Arts Society dinner and banquet. They had honored Neil Peart with a Hall of Fame award, and his wife and daughter were there to accept it. So that was a pretty moving event. And Nduju Chancellor was also honored, which I thought was really wonderful. So first actual gig, Sperry.
My first gig?
Yeah.
Oh, well, as I say, I had my own dance band. I don't know. Oh, I know. They had a teenager club, and we played there in that little club. So we used to play that like once a week.
This was in Ohio.
Yeah, in Ashland, Ohio.
In Ashland, Ohio. How about you, Klaus? First gig?
My first gig, I think I might have been 5 something. And I guess it was, there's even pictures of that I still have somewhere. It was at a Christmas celebration with that local brass band where my father and my grandfather and my brother were playing with. So it was the little boy just playing a little drums
Yeah.
at that celebration for Christmas. Yeah.
Awesome. Mine was at a nursing home. And then there's pictures. I could find the picture probably, but there's a picture of me in a white button-down shirt with a tie, playing at a nursing home with a trio, and the trio was piano, trumpet, and drums. And Chet DeBow, who's a good friend of mine, Chet DeBow booked us and ran sound, and it was his two nephews and myself, and I blame the three of them for starting me on playing drums. So.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Great. How old were you then?
I think I was about 12 in that
Yeah,
picture.
bravo.
So that was my first gig. I don't think we got paid. So it wasn't a paying gig, but it was definitely my first professional situation where I had to show up and actually play some repertoire.
Oh, wonderful.
We played mostly TV show themes.
Good.
And some
Good.
Billy Joel, if I remember correctly.
Oh, good.
So
Good.
first, what would be the first concert that you attended where you got to see, some real live music? Besides that first thing when you were 9.
Oh, what was the first concert that I attended? Oh, that's a hard question. Well, as I say, in our town, in our community, we had a really vibrant music program. So I imagine it was probably listening to the high school orchestra or band, as a youngster. That was probably it in the auditorium.
Yeah. All right. How about you, class?
I think that's a difficult question, actually. I think it might have been when my parents were once taking me to a Broadway ensemble where they performed West Side Story.
Oh, wow.
And that was not too far from where we were living, but actually quite in a big hall. So that was really like my first. I think that's my first memory of being taken to a concert, and I mean with big sound system and light and all of that, and seeing West Side Story for the first time. And I might have been, I'd say, around 10, I'd say.
Wow. Yeah, those are good memories to have. And my initial experience with music was my father was very much into classical music, and we were fortunate that he was able to have season tickets to everything at Lincoln Center. So when I was a kid, he had seats at the Philharmonic, he had seats at the ballet, and he had seats at the opera. So he would take me to the ballet, the Philharmonic, and the opera as a young kid. So that was my initial thing. And his ballet tickets, we were very close to the stage. His opera tickets were right in the middle, pretty close. So, but during the break, during the intermission, I would walk over and look over the railing at Lincoln Center. You could look into the pit. And so I would be able to see the musicians in the pit for the opera. And then, of course, when the Philharmonic played, they were on stage. And I was able to see that. But my first jazz concert was Buddy Rich at Brooklyn Academy of Music with Mel Torme singing.
Wow.
So I saw
That ain't
that.
bad.
Probably 12 years old for that one.
No.
So those were my initial musical experiences for me.
No wonder you got hooked.
Oh yeah. Those were amazing experiences.
Well, that's so fortunate with Lincoln Center. My gosh, that's amazing.
Oh yeah, that was
so
incredible.
fortunate to be able to see that cross section of music and hear it.
Yeah,
be exposed at that early ages.
And he kept those
Very
tickets.
fortunate.
He kept his tickets until around 2006. He still had his tickets around 2006, 2007 to all of those venues, which was amazing. What was the worst or the weirdest gig you ever had, Sperie?
Oh, okay. The weirdest gig I ever had was in California, in Hollywood. As I was saying, this teacher that I had, Max Albright, called me and he said, I got a gig tonight at a beach club or something. He said, would you sub for me? And I said, yeah. So I went there, and it was a very elegant place. And I had my drums, and I went in and tried to set them up. And they said, well, you set your drums up over there. All of a sudden, the band showed up, and they're all dressed very black ties and cutaways. And I'm set up the drums. As on the band leader comes the saxophone player, and he counts off. He goes 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I figures it's a fast number, so I took the sticks. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 4. He turns around to me, he says, brushes on the cymbal. That's the way I like it. Not too much on bass drum. And he turns around and plays. Continue. That was the weirdest gig I ever
had. He sang that into the microphone during the.
Yeah. No, he sang it to me. He turns around and says, brushes on the cymbal.
Oh my goodness! Wow, that's pretty amazing. How about you, Klaus? Weirdest gig or worst?
Well, there were quite some, but I remember one which is not too long ago actually, and I'm not even sure if I mentioned that on the last time I was guest on your show. That was on a birthday, like a friend of my wife. She invited us for her 50th birthday, and so we drive there, and it's quite a remote place somewhere out there in the hills, and all of a sudden musicians are coming to that I don't know, little hut which was there out in the hills, and they were all playing accordion. It was an accordion orchestra. So that's number one. Second, they took out, I mean, one of the most beaten up sets of drums that I had ever seen. But it appeared that they didn't have a drummer, and it appeared that my wife's friend was telling them, most likely there's somebody in the audience who's a pretty good drummer. So you can bring your drums, and he's gonna play for us. And I said, okay, well, maybe I do that. Okay, so let's see. But it appeared that they didn't have a key to adjust any of the stuff. And I mean, it was so beaten up in a way that you could not adjust anything. And okay, so I put stuff somewhat in place, and then it appeared that the guys were saying to me, well, you have your sticks ready? And I say, well, I'm invited for a birthday party. Do I look like I'm prepared for a gig? we don't have any sticks anyhow. So how do we do that? And I said, well, no idea. Then the people from that little hut from that event place, they are coming with wooden cooking spoons. No? And I tell you what, I was sitting outside there, and I was playing for at least an hour. It could have been more, reading arrangements from some accordion part that I kind of had to figure out. It was like wild medleys between anything you can imagine, and I was playing that on the most beaten up set of drums that you can imagine with the wooden spoons. And I was constantly thinking, somebody is standing around here and filming me, and somebody is making fun of me, which was, thank God, not the case. But that was one of the weirdest gigs I had.
That's a great story.
That's a great story.
I love that.
Oh my goodness. That's you're sitting there wondering, am I being punked? Is this is this going to wind up on TV where they're like going, look at this guy. Oh my goodness. Yeah. John Gill said his weirdest gig was subbing with a polka band, which I guess if you don't play in a polka band, maybe that would be a weird gig. So some people that have that as a regular gig, it wouldn't be so weird, would it? Cliff, by the way, said, what do you feel is a missing puzzle piece right now with young drummers? What do you think young drummers are missing?
How about you, Sperie?
What do I think young drummers are missing?
Yeah, in your,
I think what is important is the feeling. I think very often the young drummers get so involved with the peripheral amount of stuff that they can deal with that they really forget what it's all about. That that inner feeling, for instance, does it swing? Does it groove? Does it rock? Why is this drummer so sought after? Why is he on all these tracks,
Right.
being a rock drummer or a jazz drummer? And I think that's difficult to impart, the feeling. I give you a good story. I'll give you a story about what I mean. I also teach at the university, the piano students, they have to take drums as a second instrument. So I teach them drums, I teach them a little technique, and I right away start out with them doing solos, 2 bars and 4 bars. And I'm always amazed at what they can do in 2 bars and 4 bars and 8 bars with no chops or few chops, what they play musically, what these guys portray in terms of phrases and phrasing. That's the thing. I mean, I didn't want to go into a doctoral treatise about this. Yeah, that's what I think. The feel, the importance of that inner feeling. That's what I think.
Yeah, two things about that. One, what you're saying, for any drummer that's studying music, I think every drummer should learn at least one other instrument, piano, guitar, bass, to have that connection to the music in a different way. Drummers that can sing have very good insight into what should be played in situations. I was talking to James Gadsden about that. He's a singer, and so he plays for the song because he understands what needs to be played underneath the singer's what the singer's job is, and so that's one thing. And the other thing is just listening in general. I know I talked about that before, but having students really listen deeply to music and understand that our job is to serve the music. And it's not
Absolutely.
all about, So whereas technique is important, but it's not a means to an end. It's there to serve the music. And I think people lose sight of that. What's your estimation on that, Klaus?
Like you say on your question, right? What are drummers? Yeah. To me, at times, it's the ability to question information. Like saying, a young drummer comes into your studio for a lesson, and a lot of times I have them play for me just a little bit, whatever they want to play.
Yeah.
And at times you would ask them, well, is there any specific reason why you do this or that in this and that fashion? And an answer you get many times is, well, I heard this is just the way it's done. So and so was telling me this is the way it's done. And I said, yeah, I know, but what's your take on it? Do you think this is true? Does that work for you? And they go, well, I never really thought about it. So questioning information and to a good degree, it's not connected with rocket science. It's just something, can you imagine that this way of playing or this way of approaching music will really work? I mean, do your inner feelings tell you that this is going to take off? And that ability to question information and to find your own path, that's something of which I think it's missing at times.
Yeah. And that was a
great
great point.
I think that's very good. Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great point because questioning, questioning, but also, everything that the three of us just said all points back to feeling and, going back to what does it feel like to play certain things? What are you bringing to the music? And that's really first and foremost, I think. So who inspires you now, Sperie? Who would be a drummer maybe that inspires you now?
Oh, that's a good question. I can't think of any specific. There are so many good drummers out there. I'm very often inspired just by the moment. If I listen to something and I hear it and I think, ooh, that's wonderful, But there are so many good people, gosh, that have wonderful moments. It's like Eddie Sauter used to say, we live for that one particular moment.
Yeah, yeah. How about you, Klaus? Who inspires you these days?
Well, I mean, it's I catch myself navigating back towards my first and early influences.
Yeah.
I'm still inspired by Steve Gadd, and
Yeah.
and how he has been true to himself, I would say, over all these years, and making such a strong musical statement. I was thinking that just a couple of days ago, I was reviewing some early Steve Gadd stuff and some of his latest records, and I would still say, boy, what a strong musical statement, and it's not even connected uh, with chops or what people call chops today, and any outstanding technical ability. It's just when you hear Steve play, it's always music, and preserving that ability as you go from decade to decade. That's something that really inspires me.
Nice. Yeah, you always hear honesty in his playing, I think. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
coming from
No,
a
I agree
place
with
of,
you.
yeah,
Very well put.
just
Very well
playing
put.
what he feels at the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to throw one or two drummer names out. So, what is your initial, what is one word that just comes to mind when I say the name Max Roach?
Wow, it's sensational. Amazing.
Go. Klaus.
Well, you always you can always tell the song when you hear the solo.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. That's true. That's true. That's such an important thing. I saw Jeff Hamilton in a clinic once where he was playing melodies of songs. You could hear every single song in his playing. He's one of those guys that just is able to bring it to life on three drums, and you could hear the head of every tune. I love that. That's so great. What about let's say, yeah, Steve Gadd, since you mentioned Steve Gadd. So we already heard from you, Klaus. What do you have to say about Steve Gadd, Sperry?
Well, I think Steve Gadd is again a revolutionary player. I mean, he came along and gave his own perspective and his own slant. Many ways I love your lover. And all of a sudden, doing all those things, using the drums, as you say, as a musical voice, not just but he was a revolutionary.
Yeah.
That's the thing I have in mind about him. And a very musical guy, plays for the music, and in every genre is at home. That's
Agreed.
marvelous.
Agreed. How about Elvin Jones?
Oh, Elvin. Well, he just changed the whole look at jazz drumming, right? He came along and, again, revolutionary drummer. He just took what was out there and just made it his own and said, "Hey, look at this way of doing it," right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. With me, Elvin Jones is the first thing that comes to my mind is personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you honestly, you may like it or not, and I've talked to people who are not the biggest fans of what Elvin does, but one thing you cannot say is that it is lacking personality and authenticity and passion.
Yeah.
It's all about that, no matter what. No, I mean, no prisoners, no victims. He just goes for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I admire that, no matter if you personally like it or not.
No, and he and Coltrane, they were just so important together. That was, I can't, it's amazing.
Indeed.
I agree with Klaus.
And so Buddy, how about Buddy Rich?
Well, I remember first time I saw Buddy Rich, I didn't understand what the hell he was doing. I still don't, but I mean, I really didn't understand then. No, Buddy was again one of those kind of guys that just changed the whole look at drumming. You know, before he came along, you know, we were our views were constrained. He came along and just opened up, shattered those boundaries, and went, woo! You know, that was amazing. And as you say, he was Mr. Perfectionist, right? And he always did 150%, always.
Yeah.
What comes to my mind when I hear the name Buddy Rich is that when you watch most other drummers and you're trying to figure out what they do, you would many times you would see what the trick is. You would see, okay, it's this and that ability, it's this and that kind of a technique, and if I slow that down and if I practice it long enough, I can be somewhere near that aspect of just trying to imitate it. When I watch Buddy Rich, I don't even see what the trick is many times still today, and I would say, how is it possible that he's playing that pattern in such a fast tempo with that precision, moving around the drums with that incredible skill? I don't see what the trick is. With quite some other drummers, you seem to see it, and you can break it down to that nucleus, to that element of, okay, I can practice that. But with Buddy, I don't see what the trick is. He just does it, and that's it.
It's really funny with Buddy, you know, people have slowed down videos, and so you watch the stuff in slow motion, and watching it in slow motion, you're still confused. It's just still like, I don't know, it's slower, but you know, it's still like, it's, what is he doing? It's just incredible. Wow.
Very good.
Oh my goodness. Well, gentlemen, this has been such a pleasure. I think, you know, I'm glad that you were able to pop in, Klaus, as well, to bring your perspective. And I love that since you guys have been friends over the years, I thought it would be really fun to surprise Sperie with you dropping in, Klaus. And Sperie,
was a wonderful surprise. Yeah, you're right.
And
marvelous surprise.
And hearing your take on music and seeing through your lens is so important, I think. And the reason I do these interviews is to bring, share knowledge and bring people with different viewpoints together. And hopefully we're making an impact on the drum community. I do this every week, and I find that it never gets old to me. I'm always learning something new. And I very, very much appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us today. And I hope that everybody goes and checks out Sperrie's books, which are listed in the description. I put the links to many of the books that are available. And I appreciate all of the people that came into the chat and were asking questions or just listening passively, which we appreciate you. My buddy Ed Rawlick just popped in at the very end, who I know Ed from my days at Kingsborough Community College, and he ran basically the music department. So thanks for coming in, Ed. I appreciate that at the very end. And Sperie, thank you for sharing your stories as well. You have such great stories.
Thank you for inviting me, and I really enjoyed it. And it was great that Klaus could jump in with us. It was a fun time. Keep doing what you're doing, Jim. It's a great contribution.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And we'll see everybody on the next live stream, which Monday we're doing vintage drums, which I'm not a collector, but I have two gentlemen on that are collectors, and we'll be talking about vintage drums. And then after that, coming up, we have a bunch of great drummers coming up, Broadway folks, and lots of drummers from around the globe. So continue watching, hopefully on Mondays, and if you like what I do, subscribe and you know, follow my various channels. So thank you so much. Thank you, Sperie. Thank you, Klaus.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to everybody real soon. Take care, everybody.
Well, bye-bye. Bye-bye.